All right, new lesson 4.2, merging and combining shapes. This I've opened Adobe Illustrator CC, revision 2015. I've opened a new document in letter size and its landscape. It doesn't matter what you want to open if you want to follow along. I'm going to stop here and go super speed mode for a second while I create some shapes, and then I will show you how we can work with those shapes. So stick around. Okay, so I have all of these shapes. There's 10 of them. Well, actually, there's more than that. there's 10 sets of these squares and ellipses. So the first thing I'm going to show you with the Pathfinder tool is the Unite function. And for that, I will just select these three: the black, the white square, and the red ellipse, and then I'll just hit the Unite option, and as you can see, that created a single shape using the color of the frontmost shape. So it's got the red fill with the white stroke, and you can see that down here. And then for comparison, I will do the same with holding down. As you hover over that, it shows you, and this is on a Mac, so it's option click. On a PC, it would be alt click. So I will hold down option and click the Unite, and it looks essentially like it did the same thing. There's one difference. When you click on the shape, this first one that I just united with this Unite shape mode, the original shapes have become merged with this one shape. And with this option, when I click on it, you can see that it has maintained those original shapes. So if I enter isolation mode by double clicking, I can move the shape around inside, and it's still you still have that editing capability. But it is still one shape. It's a compound shape. So there is that difference. So when you are using the Pathfinder tool, you have the option to create a compound shape, or to merge or apply the shape mode to the shapes. Now, some of them are only going to be applied if there is some overlap. For example, this one here, I've got the three shapes. I've got the white square, the black square, and the red ellipse. And so the next one, if I hit minus front, it is only going to take, it's going to take away everything that's in front of the shape. Now, the reason it took the black shape out of there is because the black shape was not overlapping. It didn't cover over that white shape. So the red ellipse, you can see it cut away the portion of that red ellipse that was in front of the white square. So let's do that again with this same shape, but this time we'll hold down the option or alt key, and while it did the same thing, it left us the ability to edit that in case we haven't done it correctly. If we need to make any changes to it, this is the way you want to go. So I click click off, and you can see that they appear to be identical. But as I hover over the shape, you can see that it has those shapes in there still. So I can double click into the shape and say grab the square and move that down. I could move the ellipse over, and now you can see that the finished final shape is different because I can move those pieces, those parts that are internal to that shape, and I can move them around and modify the shape even more if I'd like to. So just keep that in mind as you're working with the Pathfinder tool. Part of the tool will make it permanent, make that change to the shape permanent, like this one and this one, or it will leave the editing capabilities if you hold down and leave that option, or that alternative if you remember that way. So Alt or Option will allow you to maintain the shapes, the internal shapes of that compound. And again, if you just click on the entire transformed, or excuse me, Pathfinder shape mode that you've just created, then you can see that it'll move around. But if you go into isolation mode, you can edit it however you'd like. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is right here, and I'm going to show you this one. This option is Intersect. And so with Intersect, it's going to be quite interesting because it did no results. And the reason, it tells you, the filter produced no results. Please select two overlapping paths. So let's see if there was an option with the holding down the Option and clicking that, or Alt, and yes. And so you can see there's nothing that was intersected, and we know that because we know from just looking at it there were no intersecting paths. So let me show you what they mean by intersecting paths. I'm going to move this one down, and you can see where this bottom shape intersected with that top one, and that's also inside the ellipse. So if you get one of those errors, and I'll do that again with this down here, I'll just click on it. If you get an error like this, just keep in mind you're not using you haven't done anything wrong. Just maybe think about what you're asking it to do. If you're asking it to intersect the shapes, well, there's no intersection because all three of those shapes do not overlap at the same point. And you can see in this case I moved that top one down, so you have a point where all three intersect at the same place, and then that shape is the resulting shape. So let's go with the next one, and that's these three here, and I'm going to go with the Exclude option. And so think about that. What is it going to exclude? Anything that is not overlapped. And so in this case it'll just leave this band in the middle between the two squares, and then anything outside where there's no overlap, and you can see that there. This shape extended around beyond that, and then here where there was no overlap, it was just the single shape. And that, again, you have the option to hold down Alt or Option and leave it so it's still editable. If you tried to edit this one, you can pull each piece apart, but then you don't maintain the integrity of those original shapes like this. And I'll show you the difference. So you can move things apart, but it changes the end result. Whereas this, it just took those shapes that were created at the exclusion point. And if you're having trouble remembering what each of them do, you can always undo. You can always go back. But look at the little icons. This one obviously shows two squares that have been combined, united as one shape. This one shows the small outline of where the previous front shape was that we just minus. This one shows that the filled in area, like this, is where the overlap occurs, and this one shows that the only thing that the filled in shape I didn't mean to click that the filled in shape is outside of the overlap, anything that's not overlapping. So there's that difference. And then we'll talk about the Pathfinder modes here in just a second. But before I do, I'm going to add an artboard and go into super speed mode again so that I can build some more shapes and we can compare all of these options. Okay, so now I have each of these listed twice, and I have the title of which function it is. That way, as I get finished with them and we compare them, we won't lose what we've done. So first, I'm going to click and drag around the three shapes here, and we're going to go with the divide function. And when you click on it, it doesn't look like very much has happened, and if you select it, you'll see that it is still one group. So I'm going to do it a second time, and we'll compare the grouped with the ungrouped or isolation mode version. So again, that's divide, and let me undo to show you one thing first. So holding down Alt and then clicking divide, it just does the same thing. There's absolutely no change. So if I were to click on that and move, I move the whole thing. So let me enter isolation mode because I don't really want to ungroup it right now. If you wanted to, let me do that first. I kind of scatterbrained over here, but that's okay. So Command Shift G or Control Shift G, and then I can click on each individual piece that I want to break apart. But again, like I said, I don't want to do that, so I want to keep it as a group, and we'll just go into isolation mode. So with divide, you're doing just that. You're dividing the combination of these objects into individual selectable objects that you can move around wherever you'd like. And so there it is, all broken up, and this is what it looks like once without being let me actually move that back over so it's still in the same kind of area. Okay, so trim, or that was divide, and you can see the style is retained on each individual piece, and it just makes a cut where there's the overlap or lack thereof. So okay, moving on to trim and merge. Now these are very similar, and I'm going to have to do one more quick change before I show you what they do. And so I'm going to copy this red ellipse, Command C, and I'm going to, while it's selected, hit paste in front, and then just move it, just rotate it a little bit so you can see that there's some variation. I'm going to do the same on this one, and this should paste right in front of that red one, because there's a subtle difference between how merge and trim work, and I want to show you those. So now I have these ellipses pasted in front. So let's go with selecting all of this, and we'll go to trim. And you see one of the things that it has done is it's taken the stroke off of all of these shapes, and you can see that it's still grouped together. I'll do it again on this one, and we'll do trim again, but this time we will we'll open up the isolation mode, and it's supposed to trim any of these shapes even if they are the same color. So now we have this little weird shape in there, that one there. You've got this little corner of the black that was off there, and so there you go. That's the trim. Let's come out of that so that you can see the difference between the trim and the merge. So I'll click the merge now, and then I'll do it a second time so we can compare it. And as you can see, taking this trim, let's just move it up. Let's move it up out of the way over there. So you can see this very subtle outline around these two shapes here. You can see that it's cut them apart, and this, you can see that it has combined the shapes. It's merged similar colors. Now I've tested some things with it, and I've used it in the past, and one thing I'll make mention of, if you want to merge the colors or the shapes that are the same color, and let me show you what that does. You see I just have this one shape selected now that was made from the merging the two of the same color. The rest is still outlined, you know, it's cut out from these two squares, and it's removed the stroke. So it's similar to the trim in that it removes the stroke, it cuts the outlines, it trims around the shapes, but with the merge function it will combine like colors if they are directly on top of each other. The trim mode will cut and trim the shapes irrespective of the color of those shapes, and you can see that on that one. So this one merged the red, this one trimmed the two red ellipses so that they made up now separate shapes. Now I can show you with an example here. Let me grab a star, and I'll just use this one for an example. Go with the default colors, so it's the same color as this one here in the background, as this square. However, when I select them and hit merge, now it wasn't doing it earlier. It was not doing this earlier. That's interesting. Well, it did merge, and so I must not have had my fill and my stroke the same color in that case. In this case, you can see that they do not have to be immediately overlapping. So I had the red oval in between the star and the white square, and it merged it anyway. So let me undo that so I have something to work with for the minus back when we get down there. Okay, so merge will combine like colors, and they have to be the same. They have got to be the exact same fill and stroke, and that's one thing that I just found out by a happy accident. And then the other the trim will separate the shapes irregardless of the colors, and it will trim around those shapes. Okay, moving down the line, we've got the crop function, and I'm going to select here and click it. And as you can see, it cropped anything in front. However, you can't see very well this down here. And so I'm going to do that again. And we will break open in the isolation mode. So we'll first clicking on it, you can see that the bounding box is smaller than where those outside squares were in the original version. And so we'll double click to get into isolation mode. We can click on the individual, and you can see that it dropped the stroke because I had a white stroke around the black one and a black stroke around the white one. So no stroke, and it will crop anything that's outside. So that's what it did. It took this part here that used to be an overlap, and now it's going without that. It apparently did leave the shape there that we had from this area because it needed something for reference apparently, but it's got no stroke, no fill on that. And then it's got the white on the bottom here with no stroke. So crop will take off the things that are around the outside, and this is within that area. So just keep that in mind. So that's crop. And the next one is outline, and that one is very self-explanatory. You click it, it looks like it disappeared until you look and see, oh, it just made an outline of the object. I can do that again, and we can go into isolation mode and see what exactly is going on. So here you have an outline of that intersection between the red ellipse and the black square. Here you have an outline of just the black square minus the part where the red ellipse was. Here's the lines that connected on the sides of the ellipse, and so there you go. It's the same for down here on the white square. Okay, so that's outline. That one fairly obvious as it goes. And the minus back, let's click it, and then we can go compare it to the minus front. So minus back leaves us nothing except what was in the very front. Everything in back was removed, and let's go back over here to minus front, and we can see that everything in front was removed. And when we had the option to retain and make it a compound path, remember we could change that selection. Now with the minus back, there is no option to retain, to keep that option, to keep the compound path and all of the internal objects. So keep that in mind. So again, minus back will take anything that is overlapping and in the rear area and get rid of it. The outline will simply make an outline of all of the shapes. The crop will leave us just anything that's inside in a two-dimensional space. So the physical, the squares that were outside of the area of the ellipse are removed. The merge will trim, will cut the shapes and then merge things that are like colors. The trim will cut the shapes, but then it doesn't care about the similar colors. The divide will cut along every line where there is an intersection of the shapes. And again, with these Pathfinder options, you can ungroup them or break them up in isolation mode. And then again with the shape modes, the Exclude will basically do the same as the Divide, except turn everything into individual shapes, and it will leave out areas of overlap. So the negative space is like right here where there's no overlap, and the place where there is overlap, where there is overlap, that is the part that is excluded. And remember that it's excluded if it overlaps. The intersected area, when you have an intersection, it's only the part that's within the other parts that's important. Minus front will remove anything in front of the rear object. And then unite will combine with your powers combined. It will combine all of those objects into one object, and you can, on the shape modes, you are able to Alt or Option click and retain the editing capability of the combinations. Okay, that's the Pathfinder tool. The next topic in merging is going to be the Shape Builder tool, and we'll discuss that here in just a second. Okay, so what I want to do is fit my window or my artboard to the window, and then I'm going to select all, so Control A, and then I'm going to delete everything. I'm going to close my Pathfinder tool, and then I'm going to open my Artboard tool, which is Shift O, and I'm going to select Artboard 2 here and delete it, and then get back to where I only have one artboard. I could have just closed the file or opened a new one. I just wanted to practice some of those keys, so there you go. Now we have a blank document we can work with, and I'm going to build some more shapes. So watch as I go to super speed mode again, and stick with me, and we'll discuss the Shape Builder tool. Okay, now I have some shapes on the screen, and I'm going to show you how to work with the Shape Builder tool. First, let's go with these circles right here. And first, what we need to do is get the Shape Builder tool. It's over here on the toolbar, and it's called the Shape Builder tool, as you see. And the shortcut key for it is Shift M, because we have a bunch of shapes and we want to shift M into a single shape. So that's how I remember it, Shift M to shift them. Okay, just having a little fun with the English language. Just remember Shift M for the Shape Builder tool. Okay, now that we have the Shape Builder tool, what are we going to do with it? We can't click anywhere with it. So what do we do? Well, what you need to do is you first need to select something. So as I have already taught, the shortcut keys to get the selection tool while you have another tool active, and that's back in the finger dance and some other tools previously, or some other lessons previously. So you hold down the Control key on your PC, Command key on your Mac, and it will change from whatever tool you have to your selection tool or your direct selection tool, whichever you had previously, and then you can simply drag around that shape. And now you see I have my circles all selected, and I can go back to my Shape Builder tool by just simply lifting my finger up off the keyboard from the Command or Control key. So you'll see some interesting things start to happen when you hover over the shape. or the collection of shapes here. So one thing you can do is you see you have this kind of selection with a plus next to it, and as you hover over you see the shading changes. So let's click somewhere, and you can simply click once and click again, or do things like that to add to the shape, but that doesn't seem to do much unless you had shapes that weren't overlapping. So what we'll do is we will click and drag across the shapes, and so we have this shape now that has been combined. Let's click over these three, and we have that shape now that's combined, and we can just drag across all of the shapes until we have what we want to be our combined shape. And as you see, I've kind of got this cloudy area here, or cloud kind of bumpy shape there. So how do we change the color once we have our shape? Now remember one thing with the shape builder tool: it is a shape builder, it is not a shape selector. I know that sounds like it doesn't make sense, but I'll explain here. If I have the shape builder tool as my active tool, which is right here, and you can see it down here in this indicator, as that is active, and you can see on the icon that it's got the little pointed arrow with a plus next to it, anything that I had already selected previously, so all four circles, that is part of this shape that I am building, that's all I can select. Now if I try to change colors, like to the default color, nothing happens, because this is not a shape selection tool. The direct selection tool by hitting A, or the selection tool by hitting V, that is a shape selection tool. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So as I have my shape, and remember I can switch to the selection tool by hitting Command on my Mac or Control on my PC, and if I select it, well, the second I pick up Command to go to the D to get my default colors, again nothing happens. If I have it selected with that, I'm just prolonging the inevitable of I can't make any changes to it. So why in the world would I want to do this? Well, oops, apparently I've gone into isolation mode. Let's get out of isolation mode and select the object. And again, I have my active colors as the default colors. All I need to do in order to change the color of this shape after I've created it is to make sure I've exited out of any isolation mode or layer mode or any of those things, and go directly to my selection tool by hitting V on my keyboard, coming up here, or whichever selection tool I want, the direct selection or group selection. Either way, that will get me out of using the shape builder tool, and that's the important part. Because if we're using the shape builder tool, we don't change colors. You can't change a color while you're in the shape builder tool. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to combine outlines, essentially. It's designed to combine shapes so that you have a new shape from the ones that you had originally. So now that I am out of that, I have the selection tool. I can click on that shape, hit D like I wanted to get the default colors, and boom, it looks exactly the way that I want. So that's what you need to remember. If you're going to use the shape builder tool, you can't change the colors while you're modifying and building your shape. Okay? While you're combining shapes, you can't change the colors. It's not a shape selection tool, it is a shape builder tool. Okay? And if you're familiar with the live paint bucket, which we'll talk about next, it's different. The live paint tool, the live paint bucket tool, will work, and you can change colors on the fly because it's a paint bucket and you're changing the color. That's the nature of the beast. Okay, so I have these circles that I've just merged into a nice fluffy little cloud, and now let's add the stars. And again, shape builder tool is Shift M, and so now I can start selecting the shapes that I want to be part of my shape in the new shape. And you can see that I don't have to get all of the shapes to build a new shape. I can get I can choose portions. And so, however you want to do it. If you want to add all the shapes that are there, go for it. If not, only choose the ones that you want to select. And again, I'll try and change colors. Nothing is happening. Why? Because it's not a color selection tool, it is a shape builder tool. So in order to get to a selection tool, I need to go and actively choose one, not just use the shortcut keys. So here I am, I'm going to pull the selection tool, and now I can change it, and it's a nice cool blue color. Okay, we'll do the same with these squares, and Shift M to bring up the shape builder tool. And this one I'm going to choose very, very particularly different shapes, so it looks like something is behind and some things are in front. And let's see, let's put that with that, and let's put that with that, and these ones together, and that there. So it kind of looks a lot like it's, all sorts of weird and whatever. Let's combine this with that one and that with that one. Okay, so again, I have these all selected. I can't change colors, but I can go to the selection tool, and I can select individuals. I can select multiples by holding down Shift once I have the selection tool, and change their colors, and change those colors, and change these colors. And now I have all sorts of different shapes that are all based on those squares that I started with. Okay, so that is the shape builder tool. And now I'm going to speed mode again. Actually, I think I'm just going to do a bunch of undos to get back to my squares and stars and circles. And now we can work on the live paint tool. Okay, so let's look at the live paint bucket tool, and that is on the same flyout as the shape builder tool. And here it is, and the shortcut key is K. And so how you can remember the shortcut key for the bucket is either bucket, and remember the K, or remember that when you go to KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, you get a bucket of chicken with K. Or maybe you kick the bucket. Don't kick the bucket. I want you to finish this class. Yeah, however you remember K for the bucket, for the paint bucket, live paint bucket. Anyway, figure that out for yourself. And I will show you how it doesn't work. What? Yes, I'm going to show you how it doesn't work. So, I've got the live paint bucket. You can see it by the icon. There is a color, and then there's the little arrow that's pointing to there, and then there's the little bucket, and there is a a symbol that says no attached to that bucket. So I'm going to click it somewhere just for fun and show you what happens. You will get the this little dialog box that says, hey, that doesn't work. So basically the live paint bucket only colors live paint groups. So you're thinking to yourself, how do I create a live paint group? Well, select the collection of paths that make up the artwork you want to color. Then with the live paint bucket to make, or click with the live paint bucket to make a live paint group. And it gives you the step-by-step, and so you're like, oh good, I don't want to see this ever again. Don't be so tempted to get rid of this so soon. Until you've mastered the live paint bucket, I would suggest not checking this little box here. Okay, I'd leave that turned off rather. So don't click that thing, leave it just like that. And I'll show you why. Because if you read that and you saw, okay, great. So now what do I need to do is I need to select. So I'm going to drag around there and it didn't work. Well, just like the shape builder tool, this is not a selection tool. It is a coloring tool. It is a painting tool. So we need a selection tool. And if you look at this first little icon, that is the selection tool, which you should know if you've taken the first 3 or 4, all of the classes that I've taught so far. So the selection tool, to grab your selection, and then you click on it with that paint bucket, okay? And then you can paint areas in between. All right, so let's see if we can get this. So I have the paint bucket tool. How do I get to the selection tool? You better have answered holding down Control on my PC or holding down Command on my Mac. And then I can just drag my window that looks kind of like that little fish picture did. And I'll let go. And now, wow, I've got something else. Now, if you see the little red text, I'll get closer there. It's red text on a red object, so it's kind of difficult. It says click to make live paint group, and it will make a live paint group out of all of the objects that you have selected. So I'm going to click, and now all of this is a live paint group. So I can come in here and now I can change my color because this is a painting tool. Remember, the shape builder tool was not a color selection tool or a coloring tool. This, however, is. Now the interesting thing is each of these individual squares or shapes caused by the intersection of squares can be any color that you want. Any color that you have selected with your paint bucket. So I could go black, and once you go black you never go back, as the saying goes. So you can do all sorts of fun things with your colors, and they can be whichever whatever color that you want. So that is the paint bucket tool, the live paint bucket tool. So now I want to change from these squares and I want to do something to the stars here. Again, you can't click on them, you can't select them, but the reason it doesn't pop up that error is because I still have this live paint group selected. So let's go holding down Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, select the stars, and then I can start clicking and changing the colors that I want to change. And pick a different color if I'd like, and keep going until I'm happy and really enjoying this color combination. Hey, that's pretty cool. Okay, let's do one more with the circles here. So I will hold down Command on my Mac, Control on the PC, and now I can, let's get a different color so we can just do that green in the intersections. Okay, so that's the Live Paint Bucket tool. Let's add another color, this deeper kind of a teal color here, so you can see what it does. All right, so that's the Live Paint Bucket in a nutshell. I'm going to show you one more thing that is really, really impressive with the Live Paint tool. And for that, I'm going to need to go into super speedy mode to create some things first. All right, so let's do that now. So now I've got these 3 interlocking rings, and I want to make a cool Celtic knot, or Celtic knot. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. I probably don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to get this, get the Live Paint tool, Live Paint Bucket, and I will click K. And so then I need to select my image. So I'm holding down Command on a Mac, Control on a PC. And now I can click anywhere and start to create my Live Paint group. And let's go with a fill of kind of a nice Kelly green. So I'll click that, and we'll have this one overlap that one. Okay. And then we'll have this one overlap that one, and then this one overlap that one. Okay, and now this one goes over that one, and this one goes over that one, and this one goes over that one. So that should do it. Let me click off to make sure here. No, we've got a little bit of some problem. So now what we need to do is get the Live Paint selection tool. Okay, now this does exactly what I've been saying the Live Paint Bucket doesn't do. So I can select that line there and delete it, and select that line and delete it, and then this one, delete that one, delete that one, nope, the line in between them, delete, delete, and now I should have a solid shape around there. That's good. Let's do this one. Whoops, undo. You can tell where you're clicking because it'll turn that shaded color. Let me zoom in here so you can see what's going on a little better. So I'm just clicking the line in between the shapes. Okay, there's that one. So this one, that one, that one, that one, this one, that one, that one, and that one. Okay, that's the outside ones, I think. That's all of them. Okay, so then I'll take this one, whoops, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, whoops, did it again. So it's kind of tricky to make sure that you get only what you're looking to select here. I'm pretty sure I want this one, that one, and that. Whoops, did it again. That one. So let's see, over, under, over. Okay, so this one's gonna have to go over. All right, so let's zoom back out of that a little bit. Nice, look at that. Because of the Live Paint Bucket tool and the Live Paint Selection tool. Now the other thing that the Live Paint Bucket tool is good for, as you saw it did with, it painted within shapes, but you can also paint in the white space areas. So let's go with a white fill. Excuse me, I don't want a white fill, it's already white. Let's go with a yellowish, maybe a tan, get a nice olive. Here we go. That's what I want right there. So since it's already been created, I can just paint inside these areas, and I could do, you know, color changing inside the inside of my knots. I could do patterns in here if I had a pattern in my swatch that I really liked. And I could make that pattern inside the swatch, or inside the shape. As long as it's part of the Live Paint group, you can pretty much fill it with whatever you want. I could change the colors of these so that each loop is a different color. Just leave that one green. There you go. So yeah, you can do some pretty cool things, pretty fun things with the Live Paint tool, and you can select some of those lines within the shape once it's created, or even the shapes. I mean, you could get rid of the shapes inside the shapes, and of course it remains there because it's part of the Live Paint shape. I'm just taking out that fill color. So I think I like that actually right there. Okay, so have fun with the Live Paint Bucket and the Live Paint Selection tool. Next we're going to talk about path editing, and that'll be lesson 4.3. And we didn't go over this in class. Well, we did sort of. So if you missed our brief discussion about joining and cutting paths, we didn't really discuss it very in depth. It just came up in conversation, and so we had a demonstration on it. So go ahead and watch this next video if you need a refresher on that. And then after that we'll do clipping masks. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.